Hello viewers, well it's finally time for part 2 of our long-awaited Forza tuning guide. This time we've got Kieran, also known as VV Zeragon, who's going to be taking on part 2 and taking you through suspension. Let's take a look.
Hi and welcome back to episode 2 of the Forza Motorsport tuning guide. I'm VV Zeragon and I'll be taking over from Ross where he left off. Ross left us with a car with tyres and tyre pressures a few weeks ago, so we'll be continuing through the rest of the series on front wheel drive cars to hopefully produce a finished result at the end, which will be available for free on the storefront and hopefully capable of some nice times on the leaderboard. So this week we'll be focusing on suspension. Now this will be split into two parts. The first will be on the suspension upgrade along with the alignment settings, so that's tow, caster and camber settings, as well as a bit on telemetry. And the second part will go on to springs, ride height and the damping settings. So let's get started. So here we are back in the Honda Civic Type R in the garage. So we're going to use the same car from last week with the tyres and the tyres pressures and continue that onwards. So let's jump in the car. So now we're going to go have a quick look at the suspension upgrade settings. So this can be found in platform and handling and springs and dampers. There's usually 3 different levels of upgrades you can have here: sport, street and race, but only the race allows fully adjustable settings in the tuning options. So we're going to buy the race upgrades. As you can see, it reduces the weight and increases the amount of lateral G's you can take through a turn with a slight increase in PI. However, this is a very important upgrade for almost all cars, so we'll go buy this and go have a lap on the tracks. So now we're in the tuning garage. We're just going to have a quick look through what the suspension upgrade actually allows us to do now. So we've accessed the alignment settings, so we've got the camber, the tow and the front caster, which is what we're going to focus on in this episode. We've also got the springs and the ride height now unlocked, and the rebound and bump stiffness, the damping settings. But as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be focused on the alignment in this episode. So for this we've got 3 parts. Camber. Now the camber is the angle the wheels make with the road. So if the top of the wheels is further out than the bottom, we have positive camber, and if the bottom of the wheel is further out than the top, we have negative camber. Then we're on to the toe. So the toe is the distance between the front of the tyres and the back, so whether they're facing inwards or out. Toe in is when the front of the tyres are closer in, so they're facing in, and toe out is the opposite, so when the rear of the tyres are closer in than the front. Then we have caster. Now this is the angle the steering pivot makes with the wheel. So we've got these 3 things: camber, toe and caster, and we're going to focus on adjusting these to get the car to feel correct and have the correct heat through the tyres. So we're going to start off by putting just a bit of a base tune on the car that we will start with and improve. So minus 1.0 front camber and minus 0.6 rear, 0.2 front toe out and 0.2 negative toe in on the rear, and about 5.8 degree caster. So this is where we're going to start from, and this should hopefully give us a good starting point to aim our tuning on. You always want a good starting point, somewhere you feel confident starting, and this is what I usually stick on front wheel drive cars to start off from. So now we've got this tune on, we're going to go out and have a banker lap. So here we are back at Tsukuba, and we're going to have a banker lap just so we can see how we're comparing to last week's episode, and then to see what we have to work on this episode, and to really guide our focus to getting faster times and a more stable car. So we've currently just got the suspension upgrade, the race springs and dampers, and we've also put a bit of a base tune on the car, just a bit of tuning on the alignment settings to try and get the car to feel how we would like and see if we can get some good times in it. So last week we finished off with a 1:09.639, so we're going to hope to beat this now. We've got the car should be a bit better, we've got less weight and a bit more lateral G, so the car can handle more G's through the turn. So hopefully this should equate to a faster lap. So we're just coming down the final straight, approaching the last turn, taking a nice tight line as the tyres squeal, touching the curb a bit and going across the line with a 1:08.886. So after we've done that banker lap, we're going to continue to have a drive around and get some settings from the telemetry and tune the car a bit more to increase the performance. So first we're going to look at the tyre heat. So on the tyres we have 3 indicators on each tyre. We have an inner, we have a middle indicator, and we have an outer indicator. So you can see the different points of heat throughout the tyre. So the main thing to know is that we want the average heat of the tyre to be about 180 to 210 degrees. If it's too hot, we're going to have tyre degradation and we're going to lose stability and performance. If it's too cold, we're going to lose, it's just the car's not going to turn, it's going to understeer, possibly even oversteer because it won't have the right heat and traction through the turn. So we're going to increase the tyre pressure by 0.5 for PA to try and counter this and reduce the heat in the especially the left tyre. But hopefully overall in the tyres, because they both raise up above the optimal heat. So next we're going to go on to camber. So the next thing to know about the heat on the tyres, you really want the inner of the tyre to be hotter than the outside of the tyre. As you see on this left tyre especially, we have the outer of the tyre hotter than the inner of the tyre. So we're going to want to increase the amount of negative camber we have, so to tilt the tyre slightly more to the inside so that the inner of the tyre becomes hotter than the outside. So all we're going to do is we're going to increase the camber by just about 0.1, so down to minus 1.1 negative camber. So the next thing to know is about the overall camber in the car. So as you see where the 4 arrows are, we have different percentages of the camber, and when the camber goes over a positive camber, so over 0.0, the tyre's not really helping us get around the turn, and it's just not really helping us, it's more hindering us getting around the turn. So we want to, for every time we see positive camber, we want to increase the amount of negative camber we have. So we saw it twice on the rear, so we're going to increase the rear camber to negative 0.8 to try and get rid of this positive camber around the turns and just have the car feel and handle a lot better without having this, as I say, positive camber, which just doesn't help us get around the turn. So now we've looked at camber, next we're going to go on to the toe. Now the toe's a bit tricky because there's nothing in the telemetry that really helps to go through the toe, but there's some rules you can go through with the toe. So we started with 0.2 and negative 0.2, which is a standard setup but can cause understeer, and we were feeling, when I was driving this around, there is quite a bit of understeer through the acceleration at the turn. So to try and counter this, we're going to reduce the rear toe to 0.0. So we're going to completely get rid of the rear toe and just increase the front toe a bit to about 0.3, just to try and help us reduce the understeer but still have the same turn-in. The turn-in of the car was pretty good. It turned in when you wanted to. It didn't understeer under the turn-in. It was at the exit of the turn that we really got the understeer present. As you can see here, the car just doesn't want to turn through the midpoint, so this should hopefully make the car handle a bit better around the turn. The next one's the caster, and this is very similar to the toe really. You can't tell this from the telemetry, it's really how you feel the car. So if you feel the tyres starting to wander, you're losing stability, you've got the caster too high. However, if you're feeling quite a bit of understeer and the car just doesn't want to get around the track really, you might have too low cast, and you might want to raise this up to just increase the turning effect of the car and just help get around the turns and reduce this understeer. So as said a bit earlier, we were having some understeer, so we're going to increase the caster to 6.0 to try and reduce this, and hopefully this will make some difference. So we're going to go back out and have another lap in this and see if this tuning settings have made a performance. So here we are back at Tsukuba after we've done all the setting changes and refining our tune a bit. So we're going to have a lap around the track to compare our time with the last episode after just adjusting the tyres, to really see the development and the progress we've been having in the car. For the last episode we obtained a 109.639, so hopefully we can get a significant improvement on that, because the suspension, once you get more and more on the car, you should be getting a more stable, a faster car around the turns. Of course, adding more parts, you've got more PI, so the car should generally be faster, but it's not always about speed. It's more about how the car feels and how easy it is to drive the track. You don't want a car that's a tiny bit faster but an absolute nightmare to handle. So, and personally, I think this car is a great little car. It's It feels very stable when you're going around the turn. It's got a tiny bit of understeer, but that's normal in a front wheel drive car. But it's a great little car and very reliable and consistent. So just coming around the last turn, taking a tight line, hearing the tyres all squeal, and a nice exit out of the turn and going across the line with a 1:08.400. So here we are with the finished Honda Civic Type R for this episode. We've looked at quite a lot this episode. We've gone through the telemetry, the heat through the tyres and how you can change with the tyre pressures. Going on to the suspension, looking at the upgrade and the alignment settings, the toe, the camber and the caster, and how these can really help and affect your car through turns, and how you can tune this to try and help you get a faster lap and have a more stable car. So in the next episode we're going to finish off with the rest of the suspension settings, going into the springs, the ride height and finishing up with the damping settings. This has been VVV Zerocon, and hopefully you'll join me next time.
Okay, so lots to take on board there. There was lots of information. I know many of you have talked to me about delays in it. We had a couple of versions from Ross, we had a couple of versions from Zeragon, and what it turns out is everybody tunes very differently. And I'm very much the layman. I'm saying to these guys, you guys know how to tune, and I'm saying, you know, we want to make this as simple as possible. Unfortunately, there are some things that you just can't get super simple. You're going to need to look at it and learn it and do a lot of laps and do a lot of tweaks and see the difference yourself in your own consistency and building up those lap times. But I hope these are giving a little insight, and if you do have any feedback on the videos on how certain things you'd like to see structured, do let us know, because we're going to try making these as easy as possible. And this is the first time we're building a guide like this, so you know, Ross and Kieran are going to be learning how to deliver the information that you guys need in the way you guys want it, and that's what's really important. You know, we're here trying to develop something that's going to really help you guys out and improve your Forza experience. But that's it for part 2 of the guide. Part 3 again will be another couple of weeks away, but we'll make sure as ever that it's going to be educational and informative in helping you get more out of your Forza experience. But that's it from me for now, viewers. As ever, more soon.